All right, guys, quick favor before we start. Please hit the follow, like, and subscribe button. It means way more than you probably know. It helps more people discover these fighters' stories, and it drives real fans and attention to them, which is exactly why I started this podcast. Their stories matter, and I promise they'll have you rooting for them every single fight. Now, up next, today's guest is one of the most exciting prospects in the UFC welterweight division. This guy's power is real. His knockouts are wild. But once you hear his story, you'll really get him and you will be an instant fan. I promise that. Enjoy this one, Jacobe Smith. What's up, dude?
Not much, man. Busy day,
Yeah,
So,
you're getting ready for the fight.
yes, sir. 2 days, conditioning after training. So, yeah, we're busting it hard right now.
Yeah, how do you handle two-a-days, like on a physical level and on a mental level?
Mentally, wrestling taught me to get the job done no matter the circumstance. But
Yep.
outside of that, you got to build your body up to be able to withstand all of this. And with me, I got a problem with keeping weight. Once I am working out this much, I'm pretty much down the weight already. So it's getting that weight back on and keeping it while before the fight starts. So
Yeah. So you have a hard time keeping weight on.
yeah, definitely. Like I went to the UFC PI and did all my testings and everything, and that was the biggest I had ever been, and I was still on the lower end of the aspect when it came to weight outside of camp.
People
So
are gonna hate you for hearing that.
yeah, they told me I needed to eat more. So I'm like, they say that's not
Wow.
a problem we have very often, but it's a good problem to have.
That is a good problem to have. How big were you when you were a kid? Like were you a smaller kid, bigger kid, what?
Younger, about 5 or 6, I was bigger. Then when it got to like middle school or so, I was like one of the smaller, on the smaller end. My freshman year in high school, I was about 110 pounds or so. And then by the time I graduated, I was about 160, 175. So
Okay.
I did a lot of growing in high school.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are you trying to eat? Like are you eating like burgers, or are you like very strict on what you're eating?
So my wife is a dietitian. So when I'm eating at home,
Oh,
it's
lucky.
clean, so I'm lucky. I got the perfect little setup. And
Yeah.
every now and then I'll sneak out and get my In-N-Out burgers or, whatever I need, my comfort meals.
Yep.
But other than that, we eat pretty clean in the Smith house.
Yeah. So what are you eating to, like, what do they tell you to eat to bulk up or to maintain your weight?
For me, they just made me stay on the diet that I was on, just being able to consume more. Cause with all this training, I'll be lucky to eat 2.5 meals a day with all the running, ripping and running and, get my son to wrestling practice whenever he goes. And so, I'm snacking more so than having meals, but, your typical chicken steaks, veggies, protein shakes, whenever you can get those in. And then, actually started taking creatine for the first time in my life because found out that it helps with recovery and stuff. So,
Yeah.
keeping myself out of that, I didn't know about it. I mean, the UFC is teaching me a lot.
Yeah. That's the PI is awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so how are you feeling on creatine?
I'm recovering quicker. Like when I would start, I would come off the couch and just jump right into these 2 days, and we're going pretty hard. It's taking me like a week to, get all those bumps and bruises and the soreness and getting back to being able to train without any injuries or anything. A week is what my typical timeline would be, but now it's like two to 3 days, and I'm, recovering and getting to rebuild that, putting the weight back on efficiently. So everything's nice with the
Yeah.
structure that they give you. And then when I do go to the PI, they provide all the meals, breakfast, lunch, snacks,
Oh,
dinner.
wow.
So it's complimented to the UFC fighters for free. So
Takes
that's
a
the way
little
it
weight
works.
off your wife's shoulders, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Cause she'd
Yeah.
be on my head like, I cook dinner. You not eating enough. You need to eat enough. She's prepping my meals. I'm like, man, this is hard, and then I'm homeschooling my kids at home. So it's like,
No way.
I'll
You're
get
doing it
up.
yourself?
Yeah, me and my wife do it together. Well, she works more so, but I mean, I've been slacking off a little bit with the training and being beat down, but my daughter, she 2 years old. She wake up every morning. She like, Daddy, it's time. I want eggs. Get my eggs going. I'm like, goodness, so it's like,
Oh, it's
go, 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 go.
you just have one or you have two?
I got a 8 year. Oh, well, my son's about to be 8. He's 7 now, and then a 2 year old little girl. So I got two, a son and a daughter.
Dude, that is a heavy load.
Yeah, and then
That's a
my wife
lot.
works full time, so my son likes to make fun of me. He called me his teacher. He calls me Lunch Lady Smith because I'm his teacher, his his chef, pretty much, his
Yeah,
everything.
everything.
I'm like,
Yep.
all right, I'm gonna back off on the wrestling. I'm gonna hand you over to some of my buddies that coach in Dallas area, where around where we live. I don't know if you heard of Nick Piccinini or Kyle Crutchmer, but they're my son's
Yeah.
wrestling coaches, and I pretty
Okay.
much hand him off to them to take a little bit off of my table. So
How's he like wrestling?
he don't like going when we're on our way, but once we're
Yep,
there, he enjoys it. And then once it's all said and done, it's like it was a good time. But anything that gets him away from the home, he's a homebody for sure.
yep. I get that.
Yeah.
My girl's 9 and she does the same thing. Like, I don't want to go to Muay Thai. I don't want to go to
Yeah.
jujitsu.
Hmm.
And then every day after we leave, she's laughing. Like, I'm glad
Yeah.
I
It
went.
was a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Wow. So you're homeschooling, man. I homeschooled last year for a year, for a full year. Man,
Uh-huh.
it's how you handling it?
Well, I think this is the second year, but I mean, it's hard. It's very hard. Like,
It
especially
is,
being the one to be responsible with all the stuff. Um, my wife's still doing more so coming home and helping out more because of my schedule and what I do. But I mean, it's not for the weak. I'll tell you that.
for
And then
sure.
you start needing help and having all these things you got scheduled, and my kids are right here with me. We pulling up to interviews, everything. If my wife isn't available, if family can't help, my kids are right here with me. I've
Yep.
done a couple podcasts where my daughter's sitting right here like, hi, y'all got any
Wow.
questions for me? Like,
That's cute. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, they're the best. I mean, I've always said that's crazy you're doing all this because I said if you're gonna homeschool, don't have any other goals or plans that day for that block of time.
yeah. It's definitely, I mean, it's like a job all in itself.
It is because I thought I would be able to set my daughter up, be like, here you go, let me teach you a little lesson, 15 minutes, here's the workbook, go. But
Yeah.
no, it's like every 5 seconds, can you help me? I need this. What do you need?
Hmm.
All that
Absolutely.
stuff. Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to tell you is, dude, your power, in your hands, when you like your knockout reel, ground and pound, your your punches are coming from the underworld. Where does that come from? That power.
So a lot of people don't know. I've never really lifted weights. When I wrestled at Oklahoma State, they forced me to lift weights. Before I got to Oklahoma State, I was a two-time national champ at NEO, a junior college, and we had weights. They lifted so much, but I would skip weights and go work out with the girls basketball team because I just didn't enjoy lifting weights. But where
Wow.
all that knockout power comes from is growing up, I was always, running, doing backflips, round off cartwheels. I taught myself how to explode from the ground up. So at one point in time, I was doing double backflips in the air on regular, on pavement. And most of the knockout power comes from knowing how to use your lower body to extend into it without losing balance and stuff like that. And I feel like that's where the knockout power comes from. So it
Wow.
definitely helped being a little tumbler growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, so did you so wrestling, you didn't lift, but is there aggression behind those? Obviously there's aggression behind the punches.
Yeah, I'm a very, I wouldn't say violent outside of fighting, but
No.
I grew up in the streets, if you would say, running around, doing the crazy stuff. All my friends were like gangbangers, or doing all the crazy stuff, running the streets, ripping and running. And, we would fight so much, it just became secondhand, like handle business real quick, don't play with it, and then get done and get to safety pretty much. And
Mm,
the same thing with fighting. Like I'm not in here to play patty cake or, if I can get something done and efficiently get it done quick, that's the route always.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, because I was gonna say, like you seem like a really chill guy. Like there's not much aggression, but man, when I mean, a lot of fighters say that when I step into the cage, I become a different person. But
Yeah.
is there something that you pull from that you when you step in, or you just go in kind of clean slate, like clear your mind and go in, and whatever happens, like you allow it to affect you?
So, I mean, I don't know. I'm more of a, ride by the seam of my pants kind of guy, I let things go as they go. And unless something is intentionally directed toward me, I'm pretty laid back. I'm a laid back fella, so
Yep.
I would say just knowing what I went through as a kid and the struggle of not having things and having to fight so much harder for stuff. Whereas, friends and stuff growing up, they got it so easy. Um,
Mm,
that's where a lot of my aggression comes from, or being put in a position where I feel like I should start at the same place as someone else, but I'm always having to do more, work harder to get the same spotlight. That when I get in positions, I've learned that you got to execute. Like there's no second chances at this. So I take everything seriously, especially when it relates to, me making money in this, because I'm not trying to go out there and get a job or do all this extra stuff until I'm established and I can like retire my wife and, have her take over homeschool and, be around the family and, have all that land that I always dreamed of. And
mm.
I just feel like we should have been here to this point already, but, my family made some mistakes that we should have capitalized off of when my daddy was coming up, because he was a pro football player. And, I experienced some highs as a kid. He was drafted to NFL practice teams and stuff like this. And then, you know, all the way to where some winters, we didn't have enough money to pay for gas to keep the heat on, so it would be
Mm.
freezing, so I've
Woof.
experienced some highs and some lows, and I just step to everything with, precaution to know, like, I know where I don't want to be. I've experienced this. I've experienced this. So, you know, make the right decisions and capitalize in those moments, because that moment might not come again.
Yeah. Let's go back then. Where were you born?
So I was born in Oklahoma, Muskogee, Oklahoma. My daddy played pro football in Louisiana.
Is that
He played,
from birth?
yeah. So I moved out to
I mean,
Louisiana around 5 years old or so.
okay.
I went to private school, did all those things, walking around with gold as a kid with my name in it. Like, and then my mom and dad ended up going through what they went through. My mom moved back home. My dad started doing whatever he was doing, and we started getting back to the lower end of poverty, and
Well, do you mind me asking what happened? Like your parents, uh, they were having marital issues.
uh eventually, so they were together 16 years, and then ended up splitting. But my daddy got 18 kids with I'm not sure how many different baby mamas, but I would say like
Wow.
9. So he was obviously cheating on my mom when he was doing all this football stuff. And so,
Mm,
I got brothers and sisters later on down the line that I didn't know I had. And I met some
wow.
of them when they were grown and stuff like that. And I mean, my story goes deep because
Yeah.
even before that, my daddy was running around, gang banging, doing all this. He caught the first carjacking case, Grand Theft Auto in Oklahoma before, I mean, the first one ever. And if he would have went to the pen off of that, getting caught, he had good lawyers and stuff that got him off. If he would have went to the pen, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
So, all the way from, people in my hometown robbing banks and my daddy finding that people that robbed the bank and robbing them for the money that they got from the bank,
Wow.
like, so my family was deep into stuff like that.
Is this while he was still an NFL player?
Uh, this was
That was before.
before,
Okay.
yeah. And then,
So that must have been like him in high school, right? When he was
yeah,
young.
so my mom had her first kid at 16 years old. My oldest sibling is 3 years older than me, 4. So my mom had me at 20 and my oldest sibling at 16. My mom and dad are the same age. And yeah, so they were doing all this. And around the time that I came, life was good. I was in private school doing all this, and I couldn't do sports because I had bad asthma. So, I was pretty much a mama's boy. My daddy was hard on me. Life was just tough. And I just learned to adapt to all the situations that was, brought my way. And I never took advantage of anything, when we were living good, it was good. I was always level headed. And when life got tough, I never went out of the way to run the streets or do the crazy stuff to get what I wanted, even though I knew I had all this, ability to take and bully or do all this. I just always, wrestling is what introduced me to, principles, and
Yeah.
it just changed my life.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say the coaches helped you out?
Yes, definitely.
Helped you? Yeah.
Because I think it wasn't until my second year of wrestling that my daddy even told me he wrestled before he played football. And the one year he wrestled, he ended up being a national champ and all this, but chose football because that's where the money was. And um, I'm showing up to national tournaments, buying the shirts and stuff. And my daddy's name is on the back of the shirts with a star next to it. And if you had a star next to your name, that meant you were a national champ, and I'm traveling and doing all this on my own and finding all this out, and then coming back to him and getting all the information after the fact,
So
which is kind of
you weren't,
crazy.
yeah. So you weren't aware of what was going on when you were a child.
Yeah, no, not at all. My parents kind of did good at keeping us away from the grown up BS.
Yeah. So then so it seems like the timeline is like your dad uh had the run in with whatever he was doing, robberies and stuff like that when he was in high school. And then he was playing football the whole way in high school, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
then he got picked up. Did he go to college?
Somewhere in Sacramento, California.
Okay. Okay. And
He
then he got
played.
scouted from college.
Yeah, pretty much. So
Yeah.
he actually got kicked off the team because the coach said something about him being an Oklahoma boy. Oklahoma boys usually ain't shit or something, and he was an exception or something. And I think he ended up punching the coach, getting kicked off the team. Then he
Wow.
went pro from there. And
Wow.
he even did a couple tough man fights, where he would just enter fights. And that's back when they didn't
Oh,
have the
wow.
weights. So you could be fighting a heavyweight and he was knocking people out and just doing all kind of, like, I knew my daddy was special, but I didn't know to what extent, like the position that my son is in now, like him knowing that his dad fights for a living, he doesn't know the extent, like my dad's in the
Yeah.
UFC, like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
try to let him live his life and like keep this out of sight and out of mind in a sense,
Yeah, no, I totally get that. So,
Yeah.
so were you trying to, because you said you had asthma and you were, perceived as a mama's boy. And,
Yeah, yeah,
by the way, I had asthma and my mom took care of me all the time too. Same thing. But,
absolutely.
But were you trying to get your dad's approval? Do you think that was ever part of growing up?
Always, literally always, like from, you know, grooming myself the way he did,
Mm,
waking up, brushing my teeth, brushing my hair, putting my do-rag on, my dad come in, I'd be like, Dad, look, I've been taking care of my hair, I've been doing this just like you, and I never felt like I got that, oh, son, I'm proud of you
mm,
moment, you know,
yeah,
but when all things started getting crazy, I always wanted my mom, you know, and then
yeah.
once they released me to play sports, it was uphill from there. I was like, oh, this is what this is like. Cause, I had cousins and all this stuff showing out on the football field. My brother, I got an older brother that, he was a Golden Gloves champ boxing in
Yeah.
Tulsa area, and I just was trying to get into sports and the doctor would never release me because of the conditions that I would cry myself to sleep every night because I couldn't breathe. Like it got to a point
Wow.
where I could automatically like knock myself out because it was so hard to breathe being awake. Like, and then once I got to about, I think 7th grade, 8th grade, they cleared me and I just started showing out from there.
Did you have an inhaler?
Inhalers, breathing treatments.
Yep. Yeah,
The whole
albuterol.
thing, but it was bad because, I feel like I don't know what season, maybe around the winter, I was always in the hospital, and it got to a point where like I was in there one time and my daddy came home from football. I was ripping all the stuff out of me because I wanted to go with my dad and I wanted to be with him because I was getting to that point where I feel like I could get over this and actually do sports instead of being laid up with my mom all the time, getting babied. And then once they finally released me, it was game on.
Hmm. So do you feel like your dad was like did your dad like accept you like come on let's go like you're my little buddy or was it kind of like stay back?
Yeah, like he did a lot of traveling and like back then when they would fly out to like on match day or something, he would drive because he was so scared to fly. And so he would leave like 2 or 3 days early. And so he was on the road a lot and he didn't want us to be dealing with that or going through that. So when it got to the time where I was actually wanting to do all that, like if I asked, he would let me. But then we had school, we had this, we had
Yeah.
that. So it got to a point where he'd be gone so much, he'd be like, all right, I'm gonna come and get you. And then he wouldn't show up or something would go
Mm,
fall through or, you know, but when he was around, everything was great. He would come home, my mom would tell him all the things we did bad. We get our whoopings and, you know, then we live life like kind of how I am now. Get a fight, then you got to leave, train, get ready. So it was like a little bit of back and forth like that. And got to a point where they ended up separating and I would go to school with my mom and then summertime I'd go stay with my dad and his family. And, that's where all my athletic cousins were, that were,
hey, your dad's
running
side?
shop with. Yeah. And it just got to a point where, you know, I had all this availability at home to show how good I was. But, unless you're released by those doctors, it's nothing. I mean, there's no team that's going to let you come be on this team to like I had to do physicals, couldn't pass physicals and stuff like that. So had to deal with that beforehand.
So when your parents separated, you said it got rough. So what happened? Was your dad still playing football? How was your mom on her side? Like what were the two worlds? Because you were basically jumping from different world to different world, going back and forth
Yes.
from your mom's to your dad's. What was the difference? Like I want to know the difference of financials, parental love, affection, all that stuff. What was that like?
So no matter which side I was on, like I was taken care of. I didn't worry about, nothing when it came to like not having something. But with my mom, she was like always like a manager at like a McDonald's or, you know, a single mom working at Brahms or working Sonic. And it got to a point where like we were on food stamps and we would run out of food stamps, and uh only thing we could eat was food from her job. So she would leave, and we could either walk up to her job and get free food, or wait till she got off work for her to come home. And, her being single and not having help,
Mm.
she couldn't afford all the bills. So we dealt with, cold ice storms without heat, or, you know, it just was tough. And always with my dad, we go stay with him, and it was like he had family. He would take us to his grandma, which was my great grandma, or his sister, which she had kids that were around our age, which I had a little sister that would travel with me. And she's 2 years younger. And so we just fit right in, and we stayed with them for the summer. He'd leave her a lot of money for us to stay, and then he'd go travel, do his football stuff, and we'd be staying with his family in Tulsa, which was not too far from Muskogee, like an hour away. And he would come back, and we would see him when we would see him, but it wasn't as often. And then it got to a point where we got older, and we could make the decision that we didn't want to go with our dad, because life with my mom, I could stay out as long as I wanted, as long as I know I wasn't getting in trouble, going to jail. I could stay at my homeboy's house if his parents didn't have a problem with it. My mom wasn't too worried about, being home when the street lights were on, or, because I had enough street smarts about me that I knew how to, handle myself. Now,
Yeah.
with my dad, when we go stay with him and he wasn't traveling for football and stuff, it was pretty much boot camp.
Mm.
He would wake us up sometimes 4 or 5 in the morning. If our clothes is, you take your dirty clothes off, they're inside out,
Yeah.
turn everything on the right side, before you wash it, and this and that. And, everything was, tougher by the book. And so it was definitely two different lifestyles. And we were always on the road too. When we were with him, we'd be home, and then we'd drive from state to state, traveling, doing whatever he was doing. I don't know. I was so young and oblivious to it. I just was, we were always on the highway, and, life was just life. I was a kid. That's all I expected. I didn't know anything else.
Hmm.
And so wrestling ended up becoming a thing. And, I'd go to my tournaments and do my thing. And it got to a point where I was like nationally good, and would go to tournaments and be placing and doing all this. And so John Smith, who was the coach of Oklahoma State at the time, literally came down to my mom's house when I was there at one point in time. Him and Esposito took me out to eat, told me they wanted me to wrestle for them. I think I was a sophomore in high school, and he started showing up to
Wow.
tournaments, and I just kept busting my ass and wrestling, and I knew that's where I wanted to go. About sophomore year, I knew I wanted to wrestle in college instead of do football, because I was so small. I couldn't get above
Yeah.
100. I think I was 130 my sophomore year. So still
Wow.
growing,
Yeah. So
but
you started wrestling when you were at your mom's, not your dad's.
yes.
So how did you handle that? You just stayed with your mom on on season wrestling seasons, and then went to your dad's on off seasons?
So school, I wrestled when it was school. So
Yeah.
once we got out of school for the summer, you know, we would go with our dad. Like
Gotcha.
until I was about, so I started wrestling in 7th grade, and until about maybe my 10th grade year, that's when I started wrestling full time, like through like summers and going to Fargo, doing all this, the national stuff to get you seen by the colleges. But before that, I was just wrestling, you know, for the school wrestling season. Once wrestling season ended, shoot down to Tulsa with my dad's side of the family, and, live. And then it got to a point where my coaches started noticing I was beating guys that were wrestling, in the state, all around, all American. And I would beat them, making it look easy. And then they ended up making me sell. I was selling cards, doing all kind of fundraisers through the neighborhoods to raise money to get me to be able to go. So I was out there hustling and made enough money to go to Fargo one year, and ended up, I think I got fourth or fifth fifth place my first time going, and
Wow.
then all the colleges. So I went to Oklahoma State, but I had Jordan Burroughs recruiting me, and he was calling me trying to get me there, and I was just so. Before I went to college, I told myself I had my goals and everything wrote down. I told myself I was going to go to Oklahoma State, and I just didn't want to go back on it, or else I would have been wrestling with Jordan Burroughs, and I feel like I definitely would have won an NCAA Division I national championship if I would have went there, because our styles are so much alike. Whereas with John Smith, I had to learn how to wrestle, single legs, breaking down. But before that, I was body locking, lifting people up, blast double, explosive wrestling. John
Yeah.
Smith actually taught me how to wrestle with skill.
Mm. What made you choose wrestling?
Yeah, so when I signed up for sports, I didn't know what wrestling was.
Mm.
So, and back then, WWE with, Stone Cold Steve Austin, WWE John Cena, and all them,
Yep.
that's what
Yep.
I was assuming it to be. And I was like, oh, I
That's
can make
funny.
money this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And boy, I went to my first tournament and I got balled up, beat up by some skinny, lanky guy. And I was
Yep.
like, how is he like this? Because I've always been like shredded. And I just couldn't understand how he beat me. And something clicked in my brain, was like, I got to figure this out, and I got to understand how to get this in my arsenal. And it went from there. I just
Do you
had to
think
figure it
that
out.
do you think that everything you went through as a child had to do with you wanting to fight to be better, or was it something that, like, I need to keep my mind occupied on this so that I'm not all over the place? Or is it like you wanted to impress your dad with getting better, or was it just for you? What was it?
Yeah. Like growing up, I didn't care about the money, the friends, none of that. I just wanted to be, the man in my dad's eyes. And
Mm,
starting wrestling, I didn't even know he wrestled, and I didn't know any of his accolades or nothing. And so that was just a bonus once I was getting all this exposure and getting good. But yeah, growing up, I wanted my daddy to treat me in a sense how I am with my son now,
yeah.
because I feel like I didn't get to do that because of, my condition with the asthma, and him and my mom going back and forth so much with all the arguing and fighting and the, splitting up because of the football drama or whatever.
So
So
you saw arguing in the house. You
yeah,
remember that?
my dad used to abuse my mom. Like he used
Mm,
to put hands on my mom, beat her, and it was bad. Like, I mean, I'm not
mm.
too messed up to talk about it, but like it'd be times where I don't know what the situation was, but I remember being in preschool, so about 5, 6 years old. My mom was like in a furry white coat, and I come out of the room because I hear a lot of arguing and stuff, and it's just all bloodied up from my dad beating on her and stuff. And me being so scared, not knowing what to do, run back to my room because my dad yelling at us, get the fuck in the room, and it just was a hard time.
Mm.
And my mom got to the point where she couldn't take it no more, and he ended up getting injured. I don't know if it was a knee injury or ankle injury, but he was in a wheelchair, and they were arguing about something. It could have been anything. I want to say my dad got caught cheating or something, and my mom actually was hitting him with a broom, and she ended up leaving Louisiana. And I don't know, she was just gone for so long. That summer felt like years. And it's just like, I don't know if I'm gonna see my mom again. You a kid going through all of this.
Wow.
And so life was just kind of crazy. And
Yeah.
that a part of that is my anger and aggression, is that seeing that my dad beat on my mom is, I think, like 50% of my aggression, which I've kind of resolved a little of it because now that they've separated, I got to talk to them about it. I kind of got a little more intake on what, life is about and what they were doing back then and how they were living. But it still hurts because I don't feel
Yeah.
like I should have had to go through that as a kid.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful that you get to show your kids something different.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah. And that I mean, I can't even imagine that must have been scary being left, like when your mom left, and
Yeah.
it's understandable why she did. But to be there and be scared and not know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because my dad, I mean, he whooped us whenever we needed it or whenever we were, being disrespectful or, not listening or doing all this. And my mom would too, but it's like, your mom doesn't install that fear in you like your dad does whenever,
Yep.
they're disciplining you. And it got to a point where, like as I got older, 10, 11, 12, maybe, you know, my mom was more so like my dad wouldn't he would whoop me with a belt, or it got to a point where one time he whooped me and all my cousins, my sisters with extension cords and stuff like that. Like it was like we were getting beat and, so I've dealt with ass whoopings worse than, getting beat up by somebody that gonna be in an octagon, that it's a 50-50 fight. I can protect myself. Whereas if I'm a kid and I think as a kid, I think maybe fifth grade or so, um, me and my cousins, we all took some pills as little kids and we didn't know what they were. One of my older cousins, I think, was in ninth grade. Um, and I think I was the second oldest in fifth, gave us some pills or something because we had a headache and thinking it was like Motrin or something. I think she ended up giving us Xanax and we were all like feeling froggy and stuff. And our parents came home and my dad laid us over. He was like, lay on the bed, got extension cord and was just whipping us. And, you reach back to
Oof.
block it and you get more licks and
Oh yeah.
like just crazy abuse. And
Yeah.
the more I grew up, it got to a point where I didn't get whoopings anymore around, high school or so. And it just got to a point where my dad would just try to talk sense into me. And my mom would still, smack me in the face and, do all this stuff. And so I learned to deal with, beatings way worse than being able to protect myself and learn these skills to go out and fight and actually.
Yeah.
So, and that's a part of the aggression as well, I would say.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. What was the you mentioned earlier, you said there were a couple mistakes that happened in your family that put you
Uh,
guys in a bad position.
just being as successful as my dad was and going from, I didn't know at the time, but, we never had to worry about a place to stay or, rent being paid because my dad was making so much money from football to, not being able to stay, getting kicked out of our house because we can't pay bills, pay rent, getting evicted, or having my mom try to figure stuff out, get help from family or friends, and not having my dad to help because, he's dealing with whatever he's dealing with, lost all his money. I don't know. I still haven't really got that back on where all the money went from
Mm.
football or stuff like that. But I just always knew that I would get to where he got to where money wasn't an issue and I was going to be responsible with it and respectful. And I would
Yeah,
never, take advantage of my wife the way that I feel like he did my mom.
that's big. That's really big. I mean, you see a lot of people making the same mistakes that their family makes,
Yeah.
and man, I commend you for being the guy you are, being the man you are. Like I'm just like, how did you forge such a good person? It's like you're a good guy. You have a I could tell you have a great heart. You're
Mhm.
also a really hard worker. How did is that something you had to work on? Like that's something you alone had to do, or was there an uncle? Was there coaches?
I say a lot of people played a part, coaches, you know, the fight for wanting my dad to give me more approval was a big one. And I had this counselor that I met once I got to high school, which I call her my white mom now, but
Mm,
she helped me, send all my stuff in to get into college, get everything. So I had Pell Grant. So I was making money to be able to eat when I was in college and stuff. And she pretty much, if I need to leave or come train out in California with DC for, 2 months or so, like now I can take my kids to them because if my
wow.
parents aren't in a position still to this day to where my mom is still working at like Taco Bell and my dad doesn't have a job or he's a janitor now at a school and a
Mm,
part-time wrestling coach, still living in the projects. And, I think my dad went through this period of time a few years back where he started doing drugs. Um, and like it just hurt because he went from, this man in my eyes to where nobody could beat him and nothing. He was just so amazing. I wanted him to just give me all his approval to no way my dad is strung out on drugs or doing this. Like I still haven't even talked to him about this. This was like 2 years ago that I found out because
mm,
I had a brother that went to the pen when he was 16, the Golden Gloves brother I was telling you about.
yeah.
Before he went in, he was on the run, and me and him and my dad was at a house that my dad owned at the time in Wagner, Oklahoma. And he got so tired of running, he wanted to turn himself in, did 12 years, got out. And when he got out, as soon as he got out, we all came to see him at his mom's house because we got different moms, but same dad. And my dad showed up and he punched my dad in the face and was like, "What the fuck you doing on them drugs and stuff?" And I had no
Wow.
idea. And so him being in jail and knowing all the street life and street stuff and stuff still was getting word back from certain people that, yo daddy head honcho big guy out there, he out there on drugs, strung out now. And so that was hard to deal with because, you know, that was my Superman growing up. That's who I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
be.
Yeah.
And just to hear it was unreal.
So you still haven't talked to him about that? About
The
it?
drugs, no.
Yeah. Is he clean
And
now?
yes, clean. He ended up, because to this day, I've been trying to get him to come corner me and be my corner man for my fights and stuff. And, he still got to a point where he got to be a janitor and, wrestling coach and to make money just to even pay bills for his house in the projects that he living in now, which is what I feel like we was going through and dealing with after the fact that he lost his football money when we were coming up. So he going through another cycle. And I got brothers and sisters that are, my kids' age that my dad has,
Wow.
so I got my son has aunties that are younger than him because my dad has kids around the same age as my kids. So, I mean, it's just a hard life to deal with, but,
Yeah.
it's like I always knew they loved me because they would give me their last. They would, do this. But
Yep.
life was just hard because of the decision-making process that they had that would always put us back.
So how did you find out you had 18 other siblings? Like was it staggered, like you found out about one then another, or did
Yeah.
your dad, like did you find out from your dad or who?
So initially, I knew about 8 or 9 of them growing up, just figuring it out as I was growing up as a kid. Then couple of them popped up when I was grown. I met a brother that I didn't know I had named Titus in California out here that I didn't know I had. And got to a point where my dad ended up just finally telling us how many kids he ended up having. But yeah, ended up meeting all of them. I don't get to see all of them. I mean, we're so all over the map.
Mm-hmm.
But a good 10, 11 of them I see because we live so close, in Oklahoma. But I have a sister in, I believe, Arkansas. She went to college and was very good at dance and track and, very successful, reached out to me on Instagram.
Mm.
Um, you know, it's just whatever way I probably had one of those examples that I met a brother and sister.
Yeah. What's the vibe, overall vibe, like with meeting a sibling that you've never known about? Is there, like, obviously that I would think that'd be scary, like to first meet them for the first time, and like also, it's a tough feeling because your mom was in the picture, and
Yeah.
there might be like, what did you feel protective of your mom? How did that feel?
Uh, when I was younger, what I remember is a little sense of jealousy, like you like that woman more than you like my mom.
Mm,
But the older I got and started dealing with it, it got to a point where it was just normal acceptance. Like we brothers and sisters, what's your life like, what does your mom do, well, this is my mom, and I love you, dad's bringing us here. We can grow, we can build. You need anything, let me know, and then we'll go back our separate ways. But he would bring us
mm,
all together, and then we go back to our moms. So it was a lot of that going on.
wow. So how's your dad maintain those relationships? Does he still, or you're not sure?
Yeah. I mean, I would say he maintains them like he does with me. Like we talk every other week or so on Facebook, Messenger or whatever, FaceTiming. He'll call. We'll all get on like a Facebook Messenger call of like 15 deep of all of us just on there talking crap, just laughing,
Yeah.
joking, stuff. Like
Yeah.
no bad blood anywhere. It's just,
That's great.
realization that, you know, it's a lot of us out here and, we could have been way closer than what we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever talked to your dad about, like, how can I put this into words? So basically, anything we do throughout our lives that we're making mistakes, or we're, in the weeds, so to speak. It's all from something that's happened to us that we're trying to work out, right? Have you ever talked to
Yes.
your dad about that? Like, what was it that caused that to cause infidelity, and you know having all of these children, and the drugs, all that stuff?
Uh-huh. I haven't directly, but you know, you talk to family members that talk to somebody over here, that talk to somebody over here that maybe talk to him,
Yeah.
or, the relationship he got with my mom and her being around and seeing certain stuff. It got to a point where I had an understanding, but when I think about it from my own point of view of just jumping in with a conclusion, um, I would say it was from my grandfather passing away, which is my dad's dad. Life got hard for him. But when he was here, he was abusive to my grandmother. So my
Mm,
dad's dad was abusive to my dad's mom. And I feel like that's what it stems from. And I remember my papa from when I was younger, but I was so young, I didn't really know too much about him. And I still really don't know. But my dad ended up telling me not too long ago that, he played in karate, I think a karate movie or something. He was like a
wow.
karate world champ or something at one point in time. He traveled, he was like real good, and I didn't even know, you
Your
know.
grandpa.
Yeah. So like we had a lot of talent in my family on both sides. It's just we didn't capitalize or utilize because my dad was, NFL draftee. My mom was a junior Olympic volleyball player, and then you got me and all my siblings with all this potential, and I feel like they just got caught up in the normal lives of, wanting to be able to sustain as quick as possible to be able to do stuff on their own, as opposed to I'm one of those family guys where I want to get a whole bunch of land, build compounds to bring all of us together, you know? Whereas, I feel like my sisters and other siblings are, I need to get my own house, get my kids and stuff over here. And, you know, my mentality brought me, all this hurt and stuff brought me to a point where I want to be able to take care of everybody's needs and get everybody together.
Yep. Yeah, man, I just want to point out how powerful and big it is to break a generational curse. I mean,
Yes.
the fact that you have, I've thought about this a lot. Like you have generation upon generation doing the same thing, and then there comes you, and you
Hmm.
stop it dead in its tracks, and you do
Yeah.
something different. And part of why I called this podcast "The Heart of the Bad Wolf" is because you're taking your bad wolf, which we all have. Forget it, like, we all have things that happen to us that create that bad wolf, but you're putting it
Hmm.
in a cage and keeping it there, keeping it locked up, going to feed
Yeah.
it there. Man,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah. Gotta set an example for my son, man, because, you know, Lord forbid that we keep running this cycle, and my wife, she put me in this position to where, like, if you're going to capitalize off something, there's no point in going backwards,
Yeah.
stay ahead of the game. And the way that I grew up, it was tough love, we smack each other in the head, fight, and it was never a sorry. It was just like we forgot about it. Then the next day we going and playing or doing this or having dinner. And we never actually got to the root of whatever the problems were. Whereas
Hmm.
now I'm getting a little taste of this and then a taste of what I feel like it should have been with my wife and how she grew up and being around her family. And it's like I got I got experiences and I got a blueprint. Now, how can I make that meet in the middle or take off in a way that I know I want it to take off and get
Yeah.
everybody else understand, without having any kind of resentment toward anyone.
Yeah. And let's be honest, man, it is tough breaking the curses.
It
Like,
is.
I'm sure you see it maybe daily, if not every other day, where it just pops up, where just something pops up, and you're like, oh man, that's how my
Yeah.
family used to handle things. And
Hmm.
then you course correct.
Yeah. It's all about it's being able to adapt and understand, like knowing if you wrong, addressing that I'm wrong instead of knowing that you wrong, fighting about it, and then trying to ignore the problem, and then hopefully it go away. And then everybody gonna act like nothing ever happened. We all good now.
Sweep it
Like,
under the rug.
no, that's how they say you can't have all that heavy tension on your heart. Like, that stuff is real.
Yep.
And I've learned. I've got to experience the good of the goods and the bads of the bads, and I understand how to get in there and work my magic.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially for kids. Like, having kids now, you just like, you really start to see how, man, when things just pile up for kids and they're not able to have an outlet to even speak about it, because back then kids were
Hmm.
to be seen and not heard.
Yes,
And
definitely.
man, do they have a lot to say. Man, do they have a lot of feelings. They
Yes.
they get everything that's going on. So then
Hmm.
you start looking at people like you, like me, like when we were kids, and like, wow, it's just you take it and go, and you take it and go, and it's tough.
Yeah,
So I'm glad that you had that outlet, wrestling. I mean, God, every UFC fan is going to be glad that you had that outlet, because
absolutely.
yeah, man, your fights are so exciting. And one thing I wanted to ask you is, DC says you're the next Khabib. How does that feel? Like, how does that feel?
I mean, obviously, knowing who Habib is, it's an
Right.
honor. But, you know, with my circumstances and given everything that I've been through, I feel like, I'm not the next nobody. I can
Yeah.
wrestle like Habib. I can
Yep.
strike like whoever you want to say. I got aggression like, everybody is doing something off of somebody. Everybody had, if you don't like the word idol, somebody that they had a little bit of a blueprint that they took from here and here and here, you know? So I like to say it's an honor to be, called a blueprint or the next to be, but um, I didn't get into, the UFC to become a world champ or with the goals to be this or that. I got into it to, break family curses or, you know, help my family get to the next stage, and knowing that, you know, being responsible and fighting was my blueprint to put me in a position to put other people in position. You know, the only way that you can do that is stand on top of shit. So wrestling in college helped me understand wrestling before that, and paying attention to the details inside of the little things. So it's all about building, and obviously with consistency, all of that, the good stuff is going to come, the championships, the world titles.
Yep.
I'm surrounding myself with these guys training, showing that I can compete with them, do the things that they do. Um, our circumstances are much different. So, I mean, I would say when it's all said and done, it's going to be, I'm the first Jacobe Smith.
There you go. Yeah, I like that. I like
Yes,
that.
sir.
Where'd your where does faith fit in?
At the top,
When did that start? When did that start is what I meant.
I grew
Should
up in
I?
church, my
Mm,
pastor growing up, we had the same birthday. We used to go to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. My mom had us at church growing up. Once I got in college, I ended up, not going to church and not doing all that. But, I pray, I got to where I'm trying to figure out, my wife's faith, doing all this. And it got to a point where, I start figuring out things outside of, how the church actually works. And I feel like it's better to, for me, that my church is inside of my home. So I
where
do
two or more are
have
gathered,
faith.
right?
Yes. My faith is all the way there. Thank you, God. I believe he's in all of us. Everybody, you know, has the ability to be whatever they want. It's just, how bad do you really want it?
Yeah. How do you, I always ask this question. How do you view faith and fighting?
Um, my faith is like way above fighting for me, because like outside of all this fighting, all the fans, all the money that comes with this, you know, I still got to go home and deal with, my problems outside of my immediate family, who, we're all on the same page. Whereas my family in Oklahoma, or my family I grew up with, is like completely different than what my family that I am raising now is doing. Whereas like I've actually been studying into this and stuff about, the church only being able to teach the certain things that the state allows them to teach, for them to have a
Mm,
church. If they can't afford the church on their own, if they want money or any kind of support, they gotta teach the things that they want them to teach. And digging into the reasons behind all of that. And so that's why I started doing all this on my own and researching, and, you know, trying to study up on, my origins and where I'm really from, and, you know, my background, what my great 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 grandparents were, worshiping, and how they were doing things back then before, you know, I don't want to say the corrupt stuff took over, but, you know, I do find it a little sketchy that, to have support from certain people, you gotta teach this way, or, I want to understand the underlying between why that is the way that it is. And um I don't throw any jabs at anybody's faith. I
yeah.
just, Muslims, Christians, Baptists, I want to learn all their ways and why they are the way they are, and where the switch is, because a lot of, these religions, they line up, and where they start turning, and mixing things up. like where did it get mixed up and where is the truth still
Mm,
lying, you know?
yeah.
But I respect every religion.
Well, you are homeschooling, so that makes a lot of sense. That answer.
So,
Yeah, a lot of research. Um, Man, what you also said that you don't like planes. You picked the wrong profession.
yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
you chose to be really good at it.
yeah.
So, two strikes. You're going to be
I
flying a
deal with
lot.
it. I deal with it, but it's definitely harder flying with my family because my wife, she'll be
Oh.
freaking out, grabbing me. You know, my
Oh,
kids
she
don't
doesn't
really
like
mind
planes
it.
either.
Oh no, we don't like it. But you know,
What is that?
I would.
What is it for you?
For me, it's just not having control. Like for my first flight, I think I got to Oklahoma State. We were on a flight. I just was thinking the whole time, if this crash, what can I do to survive? You know, what's my outlet? How I'm gonna live? You know, and ever since then, no
Yeah.
matter what, on every flight, it crossed my mind like, is it gonna be instant or is there a way I can slip out, open that door, you know, jump out? Should I be
Oh
packing a
man.
parachute? It
Oh
just
man.
there's a little craziness in my head, but
Well, you said your dad didn't like planes too, right?
yeah, I think he's only. I don't to this day. I still don't believe he's ever flown on a flight.
Did you get that from him, you think? Like, do you think you heard him say it like subconsciously when you were a kid? And you were like, because when you're a kid, if your dad or mom tries to stay away from, let's say something stupid like a bicycle, because they're like, no,
Yeah,
they're dangerous. Then all of a
yeah,
sudden, you as a kid go, oh, maybe I should stay away from that.
yeah. I wouldn't say no, but I'm one of those guys that like, if you tell me things don't go this way, you shouldn't do this. Like this is how everybody is doing it. Do it this way. I'm not just gonna fall out in line and do it that way. I'm gonna go see what's comfortable for me. Like I might
Yeah.
do that way because it's the way, but I'm gonna find a way that I like best.
Yep.
Like to this day, when I get there and I plan on getting there, I'm gonna start buying my own flights, giving me a private jet to where, you know, I can hit the eject button and have a parachute or something like that. You know what I mean? So, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm always thinking of that next plan, that next step to get ahead or to take care of whatever I got going.
Yeah. So what does your mom think about you fighting? She cool with it?
Yeah, I mean, they all my family crazy. They whoop his ass, you know. Just you fuck them up.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they not deep into it, like studying it and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they are. Like I feel like the black community hasn't really fell for fighting. You know, like to this day, you got hella people. Oh, the Cowboys playing today, or the NFL, the NBA.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the UFC has won over the black
Yeah.
community in that sense yet. And
Yeah.
the only reason why my family is watching it is because it's my profession. But I
Hmm.
feel like it's building in that direction for sure.
Yeah. I just spoke with Angela Hill, and she said something interesting. She said, because she was the first black female UFC fighter,
Hmm.
and she said, I think I'm the last right now. I think she said something like that. But she pointed it out that it's a really expensive sport. A lot of money in training, a lot of money in diet, all that stuff. So that makes sense. Yeah, I I never thought of it that way. I just,
Yeah.
I
I would
mean,
say to get it over that hump, they would have to figure out something along the lines of, you know, getting everybody involved through the whole build up. Like how
yep,
kind of how that what was it? McGregor, Habib, Aldo, maybe Aldo, McGregor, Aldo, how they were following him with ESPN cameras in his home, how he trained, what he did, you know, kind of like what this podcast is trying to do, get people to know the real you, you
yeah,
know. Whereas with football games, you know, football is such a, you know, historic sport and
yeah.
been going, or even the NBA, that, you know, it's easier to relate to in a
Well, it's so
sense.
young still, this sport.
Hmm.
It's so young. I mean, like, still to this day, I tell people like I'm going to Muay Thai, and they're like, What's huh? What is that?"
Yeah. And it's backwards because if you really think about it, it's old because
Yeah.
what them gladiators were doing is pretty much what we're doing now. We're
Yep.
just not doing it till death.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to that point where, the society and the direction that we've got to this day is like, we got to a point where you can't say certain stuff without hurting somebody's feelings or doing this or, you know,
Yeah.
so,
Which creates less resilient children. And
mhm,
man, I've always said it, like, I mean, even wrestling's dying in high schools, which is
yeah,
really sad. My high school was like one of the biggest wrestling high schools. And, I just talked to my parents and they were like, they can't get enough people on the team. So now they have
yeah,
to put two schools together just to train
hmm,
or just to practice. That's
yeah,
really sad. Because I've always said they should have jujitsu and Muay Thai in like gym in high
yeah.
school.
Well, it goes back to what I was just saying. The direction we went, we were so tough back then. Like my grandpa, great grandpa, they were so stern, tough, and all this. Like then you get those situations where it's like, you playing basketball, you beat somebody in basketball. I heard this on something, and it gets to a point where you say, "Oh, you might have beat me in basketball, but I'll fuck you up." You don't get people where you beat their ass and they like, "Well, you beat me up, but you can't beat me in basketball." But basketball is and football and all this other stuff is what everybody loves.
Yeah.
So it's like a crazy little balance scale there. Like,
Yeah.
is it entertainment? Is it, do they want to see the real stuff? Do they want just entertainment? What the UFC doing? They trying to balance it fine. If they can get that punch through get to those levels.
Yeah. I think if we saw it like more like Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu in schools, we would see
Uh,
less bullying. We would see
yeah,
less, especially
absolutely.
less schools in the news,
More
God
respect
forbid.
because
More respect.
it's not only teaching you how to, protect and hold your own, but, you get humbled and you start
Big time.
understanding, putting yourself in other people's shoes actually, instead of, idolizing this, you know, quarterback or this, oh, that's Steph Curry, that's LeBron. So, and a
Yeah.
lot of people need reality checks, and MMA will do that to you.
Yep. It sure will. It sure will.
Mhm.
Well, dude, I really appreciate you being on here. I really do, man. I respect your story. I respect what you're doing in the sport. And man, I'm excited. I'm excited for your career.
Well, expect excitement February 21st.
Yes,
Got a
sir.
good one, and I'm coming the same way I always come, excitement and I'm here for the fans. As much as I'm here to, make money for my family and, I heard Dana White say, this isn't a career, this MMA fight, this shit is hard. It's not a career, it's an opportunity. Well, with me, this is my career because I'll be damned if I let somebody take something from my family in February 21st. I'm going to show you. I'm going to let that attitude come out and expect another exciting performance.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Looking
sir.
forward to it. Looking forward to
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. The Heart of the Bad Wolf is created and hosted by Nicholas James Muscarella. Produced by Nicholas James Muscarella and Robert Altschuler. Edited, recorded, and mixed by Robert Altschuler at Command Creative Studios. Music by Alex Grohl. Special thanks to every fighter who shared their story and their wolf. Don't forget to hit the like, follow, and subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform to get notified when new episodes drop. Also, make sure you follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Heart of the Bad Wolf.